atomic gigantification was a sweeping Japan nation when along came a dude with an ultra attitude, a Kamen rider who's the greatest kicker of Japan. And of all, man, life's too short now, baby, to not talk big now, baby.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to a brand new episode of Kaiju Conversation. I'm your host, Elijah, and joining me, as always, my lovely co-host.
Hello once again, I am Rex.
And we are back again here for the second week of April, and we have been working hard to get things going here, and here we are.
Very swiftly working.
Very swiftly indeed. So, it's only been a week, Rex, but how have you been?
Doing pretty wonderful. How about yourself?
I'm just doing absolutely wonderful.
I believe you've had a busy night tonight.
I have. I've been basically working on Kaiju Conversation stuff for quite literally like 13 hours as of right now. 13 to 14 hours.
13 hours.
Yes.
That's a fair few.
Yeah. So for anybody who's like, how does somebody work on a podcast that long? We're recording this the day of Kaiju Conversation Live, Episode 2, Into the Madness of Marchand, the second live stream for the YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
And that went on for about 5 hours, roughly. The after stream added about an hour and a half to that. Pre-stream, I was prepping, so I had to get everything hooked up and whatnot. And then after the stream, in the after-party stream, I had to research the title of the movie that we're talking about, which has escaped me, unfortunately.
Of course it has.
Yes, it has. So I've been doing that and then waiting on Rex to get his stuff done. I took a power nap. I've drank one full thing of caffeine, and I'm starting on my second one, so I'm about to have a quick rush of 400 milligrams of caffeine to my body. So hopefully I don't sound like a psychopath. But yes, I've been...
Well, you can't change what's already there.
Wow. Wow.
I gotta throw in these jabs.
Of course you do.
Yeah,
it's okay. I know you're projecting. I know it's okay.
Projecting. Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, quite.
What were you talking about just before this recording?
I don't know what you're talking. I don't know what you're talking about.
Not that I do.
No, I don't. I don't think you do. So, yes, so to say it's been a little crazy is, I feel like, an understatement, especially considering that I've been awake very late the last few nights between working on the podcast, working on my house, working on helping out my best friend, and just, like, trying to get everything done, trying to get things done and watched and caught up and still have a life, and it is very difficult. It is very difficult. But we're here.
That was the stream, by the way. I only ended up catching, like, maybe the first few minutes.
You know, the stream was a lot of fun. Nathan and I covered a plethora of topics. We had Mark Bailey come on to talk about Giant Bug Cinema, a Monster Kids Guide, the book.
I actually did see a bit of that part.
He came on as a guest. We've never done this before, so this was kind of a test to see if we could do these kind of like call-in guests, call-in appearances, and it actually went over very well. The thing about Kaiju Conversation Live is I strive to keep it 100% unscripted and unplanned. I don't want there to be a lot of thought. I want it to be the raw conversation. Like these are pretty raw, like you and I have legitimate conversations about this stuff and we just kind of go for it.
Mm-hmm.
But it is edited, it's censored, it's
Plus,
processed.
We do have at least some degree of an idea where we're both going.
Correct. And we kind of do have a limit to how much we can talk.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Kaiju...
Yes. Yes.
Whereas Kaiju Conversation Live, once we start rolling, we don't stop until, like, I'm essentially like, we've hit a point where I think we're done talking.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure Nathan and I could have kept going. I'm sure of it. So we had a great conversation. We talked about Ultraman. We talked about Kikaida, Generations Kikaida, Kamen Rider, Godzilla. We talked about SRS Cinema. We talked about podcasting, art, how it helps us. We got to promote the book. We got to link the Rondo Awards. And I'm pretty sure the audio will go live before this episode comes out, but the excerpt from the live stream where we talk about Giant Bug Cinema and how to support it, that will be available on the podcast feed for you guys to listen to, and it'll direct you on where to go. Mm-hmm. We give a backstory of how the book came to be, what Nathan and I contributed, and the outcome, and how well it's been received.
Mm-hmm.
So it was great to have Mark on. Mark and I have been friends for quite a while. He was probably one of the first people I made friends with in the community back in 2018. We both were at the G-Fest amateur video contest.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so we met there, and we ended up being friends on Facebook, and from there we just chatted here and there, and then I posted on my status that I wrote for Kaiju Ramen magazine, and from there he reached out and said, "Hey, I saw you write for Kaiju stuff. How would you like to write for this?" And the rest is history. And now I'm a Rondo Award nominated writer. So quite the interesting development there. And for me, at least, it's so surreal to think that this all has happened and that I'm a part of this. What I didn't think was going to be a big deal has turned out to be a big deal.
Yeah, and so quickly in the grand scheme of things as well.
You say that, but it only appears quickly because I wasn't talking about it. So he messaged me back in 2020 to do this. And 6 months later, essentially, I wrote my review for Ghidorah. We talked about it in our episode where we talked about Ghidorah. But it took me quite a while to write it and then send it in. And then nothing came of it until he went in and made sure it looked good and it sounded good. I think I had one editing issue, so I fixed that.
Yeah.
And then he said it looks great, and that was it. Until I want to say it was about 5 months ago when he said, "Here's the book cover. We're going to go live." And then, shortly after that, the book went live. And then from there, a few weeks ago, we found out we got nominated for a Rondo Hatton Award. And here we are now in kind of a campaign trying to see if we can get it to win. The books came out. You can buy it. You can read it. So, I mean, it's been 3 years, which is really weird to think that, this was something that started on my end 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Because as of 2023, we have hit kind of my 5-year anniversary, which is kind of weird to say. So Kaiju Conversation's been around for 4 years as of this year. Actually, this month, I think, this month is going to be the 4th anniversary. Let me take a quick check. I have the date in no, so 2018 November 16th is when the podcast started. So in November of this year, it'll be 5 years since the podcast was created. Now, we haven't been posting frequently, but that's how long the podcast has been an idea.
Yeah.
We didn't really start posting until 2019, but I mean, nonetheless, the podcast was still birthed November 16th. And I came in shortly after that. So prior to Kaiju Conversation, I had made a few stop motion demos and my first amateur short film. And that was in 2018. So we're about at the point in time where I've hit my 5th year developing content in the Kaiju Tokusatsu creative field. And half of that time, I've been waiting for Giant Bug Cinema. And here we are, and it's probably the most successful thing I've worked on. That's not to say Kaiju Conversation has not been doing amazing. I mean, Rex, you and I both know that the podcast has actually been doing really well as of lately, which I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, because I don't mean to brag, but like, we have passed 5,000 downloads. We have officially passed 5,000 downloads. And that is something I didn't expect to see. And our average downloads per episode and weekly downloads have gone up.
Yeah.
And it's so, to me, it's just something so amazing to be able to sit here and say, we have done this. And like our analytics for, I'll just say this. I don't want to dive too much into our analytics. When Rex and I came back of August of last year, we were at the lowest we had been in quite some time. This was actually probably the closest to a death Kaiju Conversation had, because you were busy with school. I was busy with managing some plays, acting, and just working on so much. And then we came back. And
now the podcast is doing better than ever.
Better than ever. And to think that we're only going higher just baffles me. At the rate we're going, I could see us double what we were doing last year at this time. Come August of this year, we could be doing double what we were doing last year.
Yeah.
Which is something really, like, it's quite flattering for me, and I appreciate all of the support everybody has given us. It's just, it's so nice. And to think that you and I are about to, I mean, we're at the beginning of the biggest idea we've had for this podcast. We are not going to stop for 2 months. roughly. That is a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
So you guys can you can expect for us to be putting out content, and this will not be like 50% content. We are going to do our best, and we're going to try, and we're going to give you guys the best we possibly can. And giving you the best we possibly can also includes telling you about the tokusatsu we've watched since the last recording, which will only be a week, but in a week you can watch some tokusatsu. So Rex, what tokusatsu have you watched?
What a transition there.
I mean, it worked, right? Did it work?
It did. It did work. Since the last episode, I have continued on with Kamen Rider Black. Now I'm at episode 30, I believe.
Nice.
And outside of that, I rewatched Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, the 74 film.
Classic.
Indeed it is. I always love a bit of Showa Godzilla action.
And like, I don't think I told this story last time. So Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla is, it's a great movie.
Yeah.
I would argue one of the most popular aspects, minus the fact it was Mechagodzilla's first outing, is the score by Sato.
Yeah.
So my best friend has been getting back into music lately. He actually has been talking about maybe even looking into music producing. He's not dead set on his career path yet. Whereas like I've been like, I'm gonna be a film director or I'm gonna die. Like it's one of the two. So I was like, okay. And he was like, I want to listen to all the music I can and just kind of appreciate it. And I was like, okay, I want your opinion on a song. So I put in Godzilla vs. Anguirus by Masaru Sato from Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla.
Yeah.
And, that's the one where it's like, da, 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 da. And it gets like, there's some parts where it just feels like it's not, the thing I love about that track specifically is it's not strict. Like there are moments where it feels like Sato just let the orchestra just go and have a little fun, do their own little romp.
Yeah.
Which makes sense in the movie. Like that's a really genius idea to like have these moments where it's just what I would consider the brass just going off and just doing their own thing. Which helps it really helps that fight feel powerful. And as we're listening to the song, he grabs the volume dial and he turns it up. And he's never watched the Godzilla movie. He didn't know what he was listening to. And there's something about being a Godzilla fan and having your best friend turn up a Godzilla soundtrack piece that just hits so hard. And like I had the biggest, dumbest smile on my face. But it was like, yes, this is perfect. And I was like, do you know what this is from? He was like, I don't know. And I said, this is from a Godzilla movie. And he was like, really? That's pretty good. I was like, and that's where I segued. I was like, you should watch these films. So maybe I can get him to watch some of these Godzilla movies. I don't know what I want to start with. I've thought about Final Wars. He likes like Bad Boys and like buddy cop films and action-packed stuff. So maybe he'll appreciate Final Wars, or maybe he'll think it's stupid. So I haven't decided on what I want to maybe try and start him off
Final
with.
Wars is always a good gamble, I say.
Yeah, but I'm also afraid that, like, after that, everything else is going to be boring to him, and he's not going to want to watch it. So I've also thought about, like, maybe the like Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 74, but I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, if nothing else, he'll appreciate the music.
This is true. And you know what? Here's a mailbag question for anybody listening. Message us and tell us what Godzilla movie I should have my best friend watch first. And I'm going to say this, and I'm going to be honest. I'm just going to be, I'm not trying to be rude here. 54 I don't think will work because A, it's black and white. B, it's subtitled with no dub. I mean, I could do King of the Monsters, but it's mostly still Japanese. And C, I think it's too slow for him. He falls asleep during a lot of movies, so I feel like that's a movie that's way too slow for him.
Yeah.
To appreciate. And by that regards, Raids Again's an automatic out. Raids Again will not work. And to be honest, if that's the first movie I show him, I should have my Godzilla fan card revoked, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I would... 54 is an interesting movie where it's like... I would not recommend that as a first to a lot of people. Unless, like, you're someone who's, like, you know, like a type of cinephile, I guess. I would not recommend that as a first Godzilla film.
Right, and for, like, 54, I think you also have to go in with some... Well, I don't think you have to, but to appreciate it, you need to go in with some understanding.
Yeah.
So, like, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Bikini Atoll, the American occupation, and the idea of anti-war. I think those are all things you have to go in with some knowledge, which, I mean, he already knows about Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and he knows about anti-war stuff, and he knows about Bikini Atoll from what little I've told him. So, I mean, all he'd really have to understand is the American occupation of Japan, but I still don't think that's a good starting film.
Yeah. I mean, the thing with the Godzilla series is that there's so much variety in it that there's no just one film that I think you can just recommend as a starter and be like, yep, this is just what you need as a starter. The closest thing to that is like the American films purely because of their availability, but like for someone like you or me, I think both you and I can agree that those are not the Godzilla we love.
Right.
So to us, that's not what either of us would want to recommend.
And I don't feel like that's a proper representation of the franchise as a whole.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, like, to be quite honestly, I feel like all the American Godzilla films just don't hit the mark. And I would argue the modern Japanese Godzilla films don't hit the mark of what a quote-unquote traditional Godzilla movie is.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, Godzilla, for better or worse, the franchise is evolving, changing. So,
right. So I feel like
whether or not we like it.
Exactly. So I feel like you can't start off with one of the modern films because it's a different beast. The modern interpretation's a different beast.
Yeah.
I mean, I could, I don't think starting off with the Island trilogy,
well,
or
like
at least
Ibra and Son of and all that.
Yes, I don't think Ebra or Son of Godzilla would be a smart choice because I feel like they would be too crude for him.
Yeah.
Same with All Monsters Attack. Yeah. And I think for All Monsters Attack, you have to have, again, context, because that's how I learned to appreciate that film a little more, was just context.
Yeah.
I don't think starting with like Megalon or Gigan would be good because I think they're too low budget.
And probably a bit too zany as well for your audience.
I think Hedorah is too experimental to be like, okay, so this is the standard for Godzilla, because it's not. So like you could do Heisei. I don't think 84 would be good because you would have to understand 54.
I mean, do you really though? Like,
I mean, I guess you don't
get
need
away with.
to.
You can easily get away without watching 54.
This is true, and I guess 84 would be a good like.
84, I think, is a decent starting point.
So maybe a Heisei film, maybe a Millennium film.
I think Millennium, like choosing one of the Millennium films, is probably your best option.
Potentially. I don't think I think Mothra versus would be too slow for him.
I agree.
If it's too slow for me, it's definitely too slow for him because I can deal with slower movies. I think King Kong versus Godzilla's effects are too crude for him to appreciate. So, I mean, maybe the Ghidorah duology, maybe Destroy All Monsters, but I even think even with Destroy All Monsters, you have to have at least some other entry level to at least like understand Ghidorah and everything.
I feel like Destroy All Monsters and Invasion of Astro Monster, from the sounds of it, would probably be a bit too slow for him anyways.
Potentially. So, I don't know. There's a lot to be like thought through here. I feel like from this alone, like I've narrowed it down to Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, the Mechagodzilla duology, maybe Astro Monster, Destroy All Monsters, but I think those I don't know. I feel like you have to have some context for those. Heisei or Millennium. So I don't know. I don't think that'll. I don't know. Let everybody message, like just email us or message us on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or on the Discord server. Just what movie do you think would be best? And then maybe, I mean, from that, if you guys like provide, like also explain why, please, so I can maybe understand a bit better. And maybe my mind will change and I'll be like, yeah, you know what? Let's put him to the test and make him watch Gigan. I don't know. We'll see. But continue. You brought up Kamen Rider Black and then Mechagodzilla. Sorry, we kind of got on this tangent.
Outside of that, I've finally gotten around to watching Noroi, The Curse.
Nice. How was that?
That was pretty good. Pretty good.
It was?
Yeah.
Isn't that found footage?
Yeah, found footage, J-horror type. You know, it stars the little girl from Darkwater as one of the characters as well.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, good little low budget horror. Yeah, from the same director of Sadako vs. Kayako somehow. But hey, you did a good job.
And what year did Noroi come out? Was that 03?
2005.
5? Okay. So that was like tail end of J-horror.
Yeah.
J-horror boom.
Yeah.
And I want to say that one was kind of a sleeper hit, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who knows better than me, feel free to correct me, but from what I understand, that's become more popular or well-regarded more in the modern day rather than when it came out. So I would agree with you there.
Interesting. Yeah, I've heard a few people talk about it, but I know it doesn't have a disc release in the States compared to like Pulse, One Missed Call, Ring, Ju-on, all that. So
yeah, which is unfortunate.
It is. I want to watch it. That's on my list of J-horror that I would love to be able to watch.
Well, outside of that, I've only watched one other Tokusatsu movie that I think you said you were going to watch, but just to make sure, what have you watched recently?
So, I before I tell you the Tokusatsu movie that I remember watching, recently Fathom Events and Toho put on another theatrical showing of a Godzilla movie, the ones
Yeah.
Toho owns the rights theatrically to, which is only 3 to my understanding, because Janus has 54 all the way up to 92, and then 93 to 02 is with Sony Pictures. And then Funimation has Shin, Netflix has the anime trilogy, Legendary has the Legendary, or Warner Brothers has the Legendary films.
Yeah.
So on Godzilla Day, they did Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, and now they did Godzilla Tokyo SOS. And before they showed the movie, they actually played Godzilla vs. Gigan Rex, the sequel to the Gemstone animated short film. So I got to see that on the big screen, which, if you're curious on my thoughts on that, go check out our Godzilla Day recap. But after that, we got to watch Godzilla Tokyo SOS, which, I mean, it had better subtitles than Against Mechagodzilla. There was no Godzilla.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah, there was no Godzilla this time, but it was still a blend of an actual translation and dub titles. For the most part, it was accurate, but every time they said Kiryu, it was replaced with Mechaji or Mechagodzilla for some reason, which was really weird. But, I mean, it was a little more accurate. I don't know why they still didn't do Kiryu. Maybe it's just so they don't have people confused. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, the transfer wasn't up to par with the Blu-ray, but it was better than Against Mechagodzilla. There certainly wasn't a bitrate problem.
I was just about to ask about that.
it ran pretty clean, unlike Godzilla Against Mechagodzilla. So I got to watch that, Tokyo SOS, which I haven't seen in a while. Besides the Godzilla movies that we have covered, which has been 54 up to Ghidorah, I haven't watched any. So seeing Against Mechagodzilla and Tokyo SOS and Godzilla vs. Kong has been kind of a refresher for me, because I haven't watched them in so long. And I forgot how quickly SOS moves. That movie is really quick to, like, once Godzilla shows up, the movie's practically done, because it just has that. And Nathan and I talked about it, and he said that's just something Tezuka does in his Godzilla movies. Megaguirus, Against Mechagodzilla, and SOS all have that kind of, like, once Godzilla gets to the modern day, like, there, it just kind of moves. And it's very...
I've sort of experienced, like, a similar feeling when I remember feeling this a lot back when I rewatched Terror of Mechagodzilla, but I got this again a bit from the first Mechagodzilla film, where, like, just those films go by so quickly. I mean, to be fair, they are only like 84 minutes long or so, but, like, wow, do they move fast.
Right.
They were a breeze to get through, and I absolutely love that about them.
And it's not like Godzilla vs. Kong, where you're asking, at least for Terror of Mechagodzilla, I think, where you don't ask, okay, what's the, like, where has the plot went? Like, Terror of Mechagodzilla has a very clear plot. They just know how to make it work and develop your characters without needing Godzilla. And once Godzilla gets there, the rest of the plot kind of falls through and lines up. It's kind of refreshing to be able to not need to... It's not a marathon. You're not, like, running to try and get this narrative. It's a very well put together small narrative.
Yeah, it's a simple story.
Mm-hmm. With decent characters,
Mm.
which is something that I think as the franchise
The
continues.
MonsterVerse needs to learn how to do.
Yes. Develop characters, but keep it a simple story without jumping into 700 subplots.
King of the Monsters moment.
Yeah. But beyond that, the tokusatsu I watched, I could have sworn you hadn't seen this, but I watched Evil Dead Chapter 2 Hideki.
Yes, you mentioned that last time.
Did I?
Yes.
Wait, so I did. Wait. Oh, no.
Second time in a row you've forgotten.
So does that. Did I. So. Wait, that's not the movie we're covering?
No, it's not.
Crap.
Didn't you watch anything else?
I don't think so.
Well, do you remember
God,
the last episode enough to remember the fact that we covered a Minoru Kawasaki film last time?
My heart just sank.
Wonderful.
Oh, that makes me feel awful.
Wonderful.
But yes, we covered Minoru Kawasaki, and I just got shipping confirmation for Super Legend God Hikoza. My Blu-ray will be coming in. Thank you.
Congratulations. Well, have you watched anything else of his recently? Any parodies of timely Japanese films?
God, you always put me on the spot here.
Yeah, I know, because you're like the main host guy. You should know this stuff.
Look, man, I've been doing this for 18 hours. Give me a break.
Yeah, but surely you'd be at least somewhat organized. Surely.
God, my heart's just sinking.
Really? Because, the last movie I watched had something to do with sinking as well.
Titanic?
No. It
Are
was
we
Japanese,
Are we watching the Higuchi 2006 film Japan Sinks?
No. I still have not watched that, in spite of the fact that I really need to.
Then what could we? Is there another movie? We're not covering the submersion of Japan.
Nope, sadly not. Sadly not. But I, very recently, today in fact, even perhaps a matter of some few hours ago, watched a little film from director Minoru Kawasaki called The World Sinks Except Japan.
Oh, that's the title that's on my paper here. I think I watched that movie.
Now?
Yes.
Oh my god.
So maybe it's not my heart that's sinking, it's the entire world that's sinking, except Japan.
Oh, then I guess you and I are both dying by the end of this recording.
I mean, yeah.
Oh well, these things happen.
They do happen. We'll go down with the cast. So with that being said, we're going to cut off the horrible joke that we make every time that the listeners have to deal with for 5 minutes. We are covering, as Rex has said, we are covering the Minoru Kawasaki parody, The World Sinks Except Japan, released in 2006. This film was produced in direct response to the 2006 Shinji Higuchi remake of Submersion of Japan, titled Japan Sinks. And I believe during the Kaiju Mono episode, I brought up that this was quite literally the studio said, make this to cash in on Japan Sinks. So, with that being said, if you want to, Rex, we can jump right into this Minoru Kawasaki film, the second this month we've covered.
Wonder what the month's theme is.
I wonder too. April Fool's, it's kind of a funny month.
Yeah, spoiling the surprise there.
I don't know what you're talking about. This is the second month in. The weekend. Not month. Second week. Second weekend. We're already halfway over, Rex.
Well, fancy that, because when we're recording, it hasn't even started.
This is true. This is really crazy. So, Rex, do you want to talk about the production behind this film, or do you want to jump into the story here?
Oh, I'd say just jump into the story and sprinkle in what production we can.
Okay.
Production info we can.
So, first of all, I think we should establish this is actually an adaptation itself.
Yes.
This is based off of a short story about 30 pages long, titled "Everything Other Than Japan Sinks" by Yasutaka
Susui.
Yes, there we go. Who made a cameo in this movie and also was in Stacy Attack of the Zombie Schoolgirls and the Shinya Tsukamoto film Gemini.
Oh, do you know what scene he was in? Because I read that he was somewhere in the film, but I don't really know what he looks like.
The World Sinks Except Japan?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he played the man. That's what his credit is. He is the old business guy with the cigar that asks our Die Hard wannabe and Terminator wannabe to act out, and he will give them money.
Oh.
Yes. So while watching the movie, when you see that, just know that that is the author of the book. And just know that he also said that he read the script and he really liked it. He thought it was a faithful adaptation that took his 30-page story and extended it to a 90 minutes long film quite well.
Yeah. And there's a fair few other cameos within the film alongside him.
There is.
So we start off a film in the year 2014 with our two protagonists of sorts in a bar and sort of criticizing a Elvis lookalike for his horrible Japanese singing. And then we are introduced to the former president of the United States, Mr. Not George Bush.
Which I real quick want to establish that everything that happens in this bar set, is easily the best stuff in this movie. Like, yeah. I'm just going to say that right off the bat.
Pretty much.
Which I remember, so when I started watching it, that's the first thing I wrote down was love the bar scenes. I thought the comedy was great. I love the satire of the political leaders. All of that kind of just works really, I don't know if it's well, but it is funny. It's very funny, and I think that's the best part. But from after the establishment here of the I guess it's setting the mood.
Yeah.
Because our two main characters, like you said, it pans camera right to our not George Bush, and then our prime minister walks in, and then we have the leaders of South Korea and China come in.
Russia as well.
And it's really funny because they're the only countries that are really established in this movie, besides one other one that we'll talk about it later on. But the rest are just under the UN. Like, I think this is an important part because this is Kawasaki kind of emphasizing the major countries that are connected to Japan, which are America. I mean, obviously, because America has land on Japan, which is talked about. A lot
of history as well.
A lot of history. South Korea, which historically dealt with Japan extensively, trying to take over. China, which has had a love-hate relationship with Japan for centuries. And then Russia, which in the war, it's theorized that had it not been for America doing what they did, Russia would have went in and tried to take over.
And I mean, Russia is just a very
Russia.
Yeah, it's Russia.
So it's interesting that Kawasaki picked these countries specifically because I think, and at least in the introduction, it is mentioned that the themes and like there is some political satire and there's some political stuff in this movie. It definitely was meant to at least be something to consider and think about. With the picks they had, specifically, I found it really interesting how China and South Korea were played off to be very submissive. Which I think is funny. It's definitely played off as a joke, but it also it kind of makes sense. Like the movie tries to explain that America is trying to just stay alive at this point. They went from being one of the leading countries to quite literally nothing.
Yeah, the first country to go down.
Which I think was deliberate as well. I think it was deliberate that like the quote-unquote strongest country in the world is the first one to go down. Yes.
And even before it's the first to go down, all of its leaders have evacuated.
Yes. And that was definitely like a jab at America, which we'll dive into that as well.
I will say, as an Australian, that is really funny.
This film, I think Kawasaki does a great job at just satirizing every country, even Japan. I think every country, like you see the political irony throughout the film.
Oh, definitely. I mean, this film is by no means subtle about it.
No. And one of the actors said that the film its themes are about finding the good in the bad, which you do see, but it takes a long time for it to finally happen, which we'll talk about a little later. If you want to, we can kind of go back into this story. So following this introduction of all of our world leaders, we get a very explosive montage in our title sequence. Which, do you think the explosions are stock footage?
I think a fair few of them are.
I want to know what they're from.
I'm honestly not sure.
So, to kind of explain, so then after this establishment of the bar, we cut to a bunch of explosions. There's also some like volcanic stock footage that happens, it's obviously stock footage. But there's explosions that are clearly in worse quality. The film was obviously shot on a digital camera.
Yet these look like they're on film.
On film because of the grain. But they're miniature.
And then they're contrasted with the new shots of like the Statue of Liberty being destroyed, which is clearly digital.
Right. So I couldn't find anything. Kawasaki didn't mention like where the footage came from when I watched it.
It kind of reminds me of some of the footage that would appear in like some insert shots that would appear in like Heisei and Millennium Godzilla films.
Yes.
That was stock footage.
Yes.
Like specifically from like the Kaiju movies during like Kaijus Rampage.
Mm-hmm. Are you thinking of specifically that factory that
they
was
don't
reused?
Use that factory in this film from what I remember, but it does sort of, the shots do remind me a lot of that.
Yes. And it's obvious the sets are a little cheap. So whatever they were taking this footage from, it was kind of a cheaper movie. Kind of like maybe a Sentai level. Super Sentai.
I wouldn't go as far as to say Sentai. But I'm not quite sure what I would call it, to be honest.
See, to me, it kind of looks like Super Sentai buildings.
You see, for me, having my entire experience of Sentai being Zyuranger, I'm going to say that is a massive compliment for Sentai.
See, I've only, I was thinking of the footage of I've seen the clip of the T-Rex running through the city. That's kind of the footage I'm seeing in my head when I think of those buildings.
What, like the T-Rex sword, the Tyrannosaur?
Yes, I think.
Oh, sorry.
I think
because when you said T-Rex running through the sea, I'm just thinking are you talking about Eisenborg?
I wish.
Mm.
So after the explosive title sequence, this is where the film kind of gets a little weird for a little bit. It doesn't waste time getting to the idea of the world sinking, because after the title sequence, it jumps right into explaining why America, Russia, China, and South Korea are all with Japan.
We get a decently extended flashback set 3 years before.
Right. But it's also, to me, it's a little weird because the flashbacks kind of happen for the first, 20 minutes, but it doesn't establish when it's a flashback and when it's, set. Because we go back and...
pretty, for the most part, fairly linear and fairly clear. I didn't have any issues.
Until the movie star stuff. That's when it gets confusing. Because we go back and it's the report of America sinking. And we're watching our main characters try to get all the news and whatnot. As this occurs, that's where we also get the America's leaders have left before everybody else. And we get our first little joke at the American leaders talking about how America must live on. America is not a place. It is a people, apparently. And did you just now get the reference I was making?
No, I got it before. I just think it's hilarious. Especially being an Australian and knowing and remembering the bushfires from a few years back.
See, I don't know what that's referencing, so...
Hawaii?
No clue. No.
Damn.
No. I don't.
Absolute failure.
I know. So, at least for me, it was the movie star stuff. It makes sense. America sinks. Americans go to different countries and whatnot. And then it cuts back to movie stars leaving Los Angeles after the country sank, which was okay, so we're now jumping back in time again. Only to jump forward in time again for these movie stars to arrive in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, we kind of... The time jumping fixes itself. And once again, it kind of quickly gets to the point again with the world sinking.
I don't know. I didn't really interpret it as just with that bit on the actors and all that. I didn't interpret it as there being time jumps. I kind of just interpreted it as New York is sinking, America is sinking. It hasn't fully sunk yet.
But I could have swore they established that it had.
I mean, they definitely show it sinking, but the dialogue, at least in the sub, is talks about it as it's something that is still happening,
Gotcha.
rather than something that has happened.
Gotcha.
But from there, we follow sort of the Japanese, just the Japanese people, specifically the news media, which our main character, our unnamed protagonist, works for. And as well as him, we also follow a bit of the Prime Minister's response to Japan sinking. The Prime Minister seeks the advice of Dr. Tadakoro, or Professor Tadakoro, named after the professor from the original Japan Sinks, and serving essentially the same sort of role. And you were going to say something, or?
I was just going to say, but this time more creepy and perverted.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, perhaps not more creepy per se. He's kind of a bit of a weirdo in the original film, to be honest. So, not in the same like sex hungry way, but just kind of an odd figure in the first film, I'd say.
Gotcha. See, I haven't, and I should establish this now, I haven't seen Japan Sinks, the TV show, the anime, or Submersion of Japan. So I don't understand the jokes being made about that. And I haven't read the either the short story that this is based off of, or I'm pretty sure there's a novel about the other Submersion of Japan too.
Yeah. I have seen the first Submersion of Japan film starring Hiroshi Fujioka. I was hoping to get around to watching Japan Sinks 06 before this episode, but unfortunately I didn't get around to it, unfortunately. Didn't have the time. But alas, it is what it is. But yeah, so Tadakoro basically explains that the whole world, except for Japan, is sinking. A shocking revelation.
My best friend watched this with me, and he was like, is it the food that's falling into the water that's making it? Because while he's explaining this, people are having accidents and like dropping their food over a bridge into the water, which I don't think that's what it's insinuating, but it's also Kawasaki, so maybe that's what caused it.
That's not how I interpreted it.
Maybe it's saying that littering is causing problems.
I mean, they talk a decent bit about the tectonic plates movements in the film, so I'm going to presume that people littering and dropping food had nothing to do with it.
Right. No, and that's something that I do give the movie props for, is they do try to explain why it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little weird, but it makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, this film is, for going off the last Kawasaki film I saw, this film is I would say, takes itself more seriously overall. Like, it's still a parody film at the end of the day, but it's not just every scene is a haha funny.
Right.
There's like, it feels like there's an actual legitimate drama going on outside of just comedic moments here every second.
Right, and that's something. So Kaiju Mono came out in 2016. I feel like, and I think he's starting to get away from this, because I feel like after this film he did Monster X Strikes Back Attack the G8 Summit. Which, if I recall correctly, I haven't seen that movie in over 10 years because I hated it so much. But it was a straight up like parody comedy satire. So it was like the dumbest you can get.
Yeah.
And then you had Pussy Soup, which, I mean, it sounds ridiculous. I'm going to guess that it's really stupid too. It's about a tiny cat making soup.
Yeah.
Then you had Earth Defense Widow. Outer Man, I've heard, isn't as comedic as the rest, so that's kind of the outlier. But then you, after Earth Defense Widow, you had Outer Man, and then I think after that was Kaiju Mono. So I feel like there was like a moment in Kawasaki's career, kind of like this middle part so far, that he kind of drifted into straight up like comedy, satire, parodies.
Mm-hmm.
And then with like Monster Seafood Wars and I'm going to guess Planet Prince and maybe Super God Legend Hikoza, he's kind of went back to that, because Monster Seafood Wars is not just a straight up comedy. I mean, there's funny moments, but they also try to be serious as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the subject matter's funny, but they're not trying to be funny, which is what the world thinks except Japan, Calamari Wrestler, Goalkeeper Crab, Executive Koala, Rug Cup. That's what all of them are. Is the subject matter is funny. Like the idea that the world sinks except Japan is funny.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not playing the jokes about that.
Mm-hmm.
Which is something I appreciate. And I'm happy you pointed out that the world sinks except Japan's more of it does have that drama. And there is moments where like it's actually a problem. It's not like Kaiju Mono where they kind of just make a joke out of the monster. They don't make a joke out of the world sinking except Japan.
Mm-hmm.
It is causing problems, and they touch on those problems, and they don't ignore what's going on.
Yeah.
Which is really nice.
And I think it was good as well, just watching it sort of explore the effects of what the entire world except Japan sinking would bring about, you know?
Right.
Especially on things like racial tensions.
Yes. And we start to see that with the next scene after I mean,
even at the beginning scene, you know, with our introduction to not Elvis and like the American president and his assistant,
Secretary of State.
Yeah, where there's sort of back and forth on racism / xenophobia, and that it's a prominent issue throughout the entire film.
Right, and that's something that I really like, the fact that Kawasaki doesn't ignore what that would the problems that would bring.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we see that with the following scene after the sinking of the rest of the world, which is all symbolized by this computer graphic in each continent sinking, which Australia was the last one to go. Lucky you, Rex. But then we go back to the bar, and we have this Terminator wannabe and this Bruce Willis wannabe lookalikes. They, in the cast, they're credited as Hollywood stars, where we have a Japanese man, played by the author of this short story, come up and say, "Here, I'll give you money if you can entertain me." So they try to entertain him, but at the end they're just embarrassing themselves, which sets the tone for the rest of the movie and how foreigners are viewed. And I was what's interesting is around the time of this movie, there was in Japan a problem, not with immigrants, but with foreigners coming over to Japan. If I remember correctly, I've been explained to that you can't actually move to Japan permanently.
Oh.
From what I've been told, you have to, like, I can't, like, if you want to move to America, you can just move to America. You just have to get a visa, travel across borders, clear through customs, and, find a way to have a place to live, which is, I mean, difficult in of itself, but in Japan, you can't do that. Like, you can come over for military purposes and live on a military base. You can come over for business purposes, but like it has to be like established prior to moving, whether it's like an English teacher or working out of an office building or something like that. You can't claim residence. You can't become a citizen of Japan. Essentially, you have these like things you have to renew, like I guess it is a citizenship card, but you have to renew it every so often to be allowed to stay in Japan and have like a place of residence and to live there. So around this time, they were having a lot of foreigners come over, and it was causing some problems. And Japan does have a population problem in their major cities. So the idea of you're having refugees, thousands of refugees from all over the planet come over, you're going to have those issues. And they don't talk about this in the movie, but I know most of Japan's population is in like Tokyo and in the major cities, not so much in the more like nature
regional areas.
Yes. But
I mean,
if you had
that a given for any area, that's kind of what the purpose of a city.
This is but like in America, even in those more like rural areas, there's still a lot of people that live there. There are plenty of spots where people don't live, but I mean, you can have just as many people living in like non-urban areas as urban areas. If you had thousands of refugees come over, you would lose a lot of that. A lot of your nature would die. And they kind of cover that on like you can't fish in certain ponds, and people have to do that to survive on food, which causes problems.
Food is a massive issue in the film.
It is.
With, Japan, they bring up how Japan relies a lot on importation of certain food items from America, and then how because the entire world, has to move to Japan, food supplies become ridiculously low in a matter of weeks. Food becomes expensive, and food items that were considered delicacies and kind of rare because of ethical reasons just become commonplace. Like hunting whales, something that is rather frowned upon for good reason, just becomes a necessity in this film.
And I'm happy we started talking about this because this is oddly relevant to at least the current market in America. I think it's said like it's cheaper to just eat out than go buy groceries. Like buying groceries is difficult for people.
I mean, healthier food is also getting more and more expensive.
Right. But like in America right now, we have inflation prices because of stimulus checks and COVID, and we had a huge increase in purchases when COVID hit, and then COVID killed the economy. Purchases went down to an all-time low, and then when everything started going back into quote-unquote normalcy, those prices have just kept going up and up and up, whether it's importing fees and taxes, or it's just inflation or lack of materials, or all of this stuff. It is quite honestly cheaper to go eat out than go shopping.
Mm.
And I'm not going to sit here and complain because this is not a place to complain about inflation and whatnot. But it's just interesting to see this occurring in America right now after a natural disaster.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's what happens here. And Kawasaki, I think, does a great job at covering the domestic problems that this does bring. Lack of food supply, increase of prices, homelessness, and like all of this is brought up. And
I mean, homelessness would be a massive issue if in this situation as well.
and I mean, we end up seeing people living in cardboard houses.
Cardboard houses, just hiding in temples wherever they can go, you know?
Mm-hmm. And then my favorite part, so as the film progresses, we see xenophobic stuff beginning to occur.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Japan essentially becomes a totalitarian society at a certain point in this film.
And if you're not married to a Japanese individual or straight up Japanese, you are viewed as inferior. Which I think would happen. I absolutely believe no matter what country you're in, that would happen.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it does happen in our real world.
It does.
You know? Countries like China with the, I want to say Uyghur population. I want to say that. Like there's those issues of discrimination against people who are seen as inferior. I mean, America has quite the history with that. Australia as well. So of course that would happen in this sort of scenario where there's only one country left in the world.
Mm-hmm. And it's such an interesting concept because of how true it is. And in a way that kind of it removes the comedic and satirical aspects of the world, things except Japan, because it doesn't shy away from the negatives.
Yeah, and that's what I think engaged me more with this overall than Kaiju Mono was that, you know, there was for a parody film there was an aspect of realism in this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I totally believe that some of the things addressed in here, maybe not perhaps they wouldn't happen as comedically as they do in this film, but I do totally think that in this sort of scenario, something similar would happen. In some cases, similar events have happened after this film was made, you know? So yeah.
And one of the, I think a cool, really interesting part. So, you know, money is becoming a difficult subject in the film, and you do have
and
Americans, in real life too, and you do have these problems of living, but some people who moved to Japan were able to be successful initially. Specifically in this movie, the movie star couple.
Yeah.
And they're living in an apartment in Japan, and this is something I thought was really cool that they talked about was now that all the countries are gone, I mean, they brought with them their money, but I mean, I think it was kind of stupid for them to not like.
I was about to say, wouldn't the first thing you do is convert your money to yen?
Right. But they don't. And maybe it was like the idea of, and this is just headcanon, but it was initially said that, oh, you can still use your money, we will honor it.
Maybe.
But the dollar becomes absolutely worthless.
Yeah, all dollars except for the yen become virtually nothing.
Which, again, is happening in real life because of how much money has went into the economy with the stimulus checks. The dollar has decreased in value, which has led to inflation.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, it's oddly relevant to modern day America because of that problem. The yen is, it used to be you could convert it, and with $100 you could get a lot of stuff in the yen, but now you can't.
Mm. I mean,
So
in real life, it seems to be quite the opposite at the moment. At least last I checked.
how so?
Because last I'd heard the Japanese economy was doing not the greatest, and the Japanese yen was losing a lot of value when compared to the US dollar. So,
See, when I was looking, which admittedly I haven't looked in like a year or so, it was the opposite. It was the dollar was not as valuable as it was, but I remember
maybe
since
things are changing, but last I heard on it, like the Japanese yen was going to a real bad state.
But that, I mean, that is relevant. Like the idea of just money losing value. It's so interesting. And after they establish all of this, this is when specifically our movie stars who are American or Caucasian at least, they need work. And so Japan gives them work, but it's as extras in a Den Ace cameo, which was really cool. Den Ace is actually, so we get it's Den Ace is Minoru Kawasaki's Ultraman love letter.
Yeah. And he appears in a fair few of Kawasaki's films like Earth Defense Force.
Yes. And it was great to see Den Ace, but on top of that, we also get I took it as maybe as an Eisenberg reference. Maybe it's a Godzilla reference with the T-Rex dinosaur.
I just saw it as like just T-Rex monster. You know.
Yeah.
I just saw it as face value. Maybe it's a Eisenberg reference, but it's just the monster of the week for the show.
Right. But what's cool is, so it's obviously the villain, and they're like, it eats foreigners. The term foreigners becomes almost, I would argue, a derogatory term in this movie. And they're like, it eats foreigners. So Den Ace comes, and then when Den Ace falls, he falls only on foreigners. So even the hero is getting rid of foreigners, but that's the only way they can make money is becoming these. Well,
that's the thing. Like at the start of the film, the foreign actors first, you know, the Japanese TV networks were first getting all the foreign actors to star in all of their programs. But then, because A, the Japanese people got sick of seeing foreigners, and B, the foreigners who would watch, you know, their home actors couldn't afford TVs. Low ratings led to the foreigners going out of work and having to essentially just rely on these extra roles where they get quite literally stomped on. And I thought that was really interesting, and something that
it was.
You know, I could legitimately see something similar to that happening in a real world scenario.
Yeah. And like the idea that they put that thought into it is great, because like there has to be some like.
I think there was some. I thought some of the thoughts in this movie were legitimately really interesting.
It's obvious they went and they wrote, okay, what would be the domino effect with this? Because everything kind of follows how I genuinely think it would happen in real life. This occurred, so this happens, and then this happens. And that is the most interesting part about this film, is everything's a domino effect.
And it's a strangely, maybe believable isn't the right word, but like
realistic approach.
Yeah. Like to this ridiculous scenario.
And it's really interesting to see this. From this point, however, the movie star subplot, because you have your main plot of like Japan dealing with this, and then you get the subplot with the movie star, which I think is really boring. Like, I feel like they could cut the movie star plot. It feels pointless.
You see, I feel it starts off interesting, but it takes up too much of a film.
I agree. Which that was a jarring like transition, but I just wanted, because as all of these interesting concepts are coming, the development of this subplot between the married couple divorcing and then getting intertwined with our other characters feels kind of pointless. Like, you don't need it. You could write it differently and save yourself maybe 5, 6, 7 minutes. I mean, it's not a lot of time, but nonetheless, it feels pointless to include.
Yeah, especially with how the film does end.
Yeah. But following the establishment of the foreigners, we get a nice Ultraman reference beyond the Dennis cameo. We get GAT, which is the establishment of the Gaijin
attack team,
which is a reference to Matt, the monster attack team from Return of Ultraman, correct?
And yeah, I think the logo looked pretty similar to the Matt logo.
It did.
R.I.P. Gratton.
I was going to say, do you want to take a pause there, since we have a perfect moment to acknowledge the passing of Gratton, actor for Hideki Go from Return of Ultraman, and
as
the
well
G-Card,
the commander from Godzilla Island.
So, real quick, we just on March 22nd, Gratton passed away from lung cancer. He had been battling since, I believe I read, 2019.
Wow.
Which is weird because he was the first Ultraman host to pass away. Which we talked about in the live stream, and Danny DeManna mentioned that it's really weird because this has never happened, and none of the Ultraman hosts have passed away. So they did feel immortal. Like, the thought of an Ultraman host dying has never crossed my mind. Like, to me, the actor for Den Moriboshi and Shin Hayata will never not be here.
But unfortunately, time still moves, and yeah, Gratton's the first to go, and probably over the next few years we'll eventually see more.
Stop.
I'm sorry, but it's true.
Don't do this to me.
I'm sorry. I'm just saying it, okay?
It sucks.
It does. I agree.
I hate this. So many actors have been passing away recently. That's like,
I know.
Why? Takarada, Sonny Chiba,
Jason David Frank.
Mm-hmm. It's so weird, and it's kind of scary.
Yeah.
Because to me, this is like a lot of these people are Showa, and it's like the last wave of Showa actors that like 60s and 70s. That's what we're seeing go right now, and that's like, stop.
I think the only person from 54 that is like from that entire production that we know for a fact is still alive is like
Sahara.
Kenji Sahara. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
which
maybe somehow Katsumi Tezuka is alive, but I highly doubt he is over 100 years old personally. But technically not confirmed, so maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe. Right, and you still have like Chumi Mizuno, and a few others.
Yeah,
Tomoko Ai is still Kurobe.
Yep.
But yeah, it's just it's not I'm not liking the era we're in now.
It sucks. It
does.
really does suck.
I feel like this is how the kaiju fans felt in the 90s when we were losing
Ishiro
Honda,
Rada, all them.
Mm-hmm. I'm so happy I wasn't alive for Honda's death. I feel like that would have absolutely torn me apart.
Sucked.
But I just wanted to stop real quick while we had kind of a little segue here to talk about GODZILLA and pay respects.
Yeah.
Which it's weird to kind of transition from this because following the establishment of GAT is probably the weirdest part of this movie, but it's also my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really lighthearted, so I guess it's kind of nice to go from the depressing thing to the lighthearted thing, and that's the Nippon video.
Oh.
It took you a second to think of what I was talking about.
Yeah.
So, following like the establishment of basically the anti-foreigners division, like made to like take care of foreigners and deport them, the term deporting is used a lot in this movie.
Yeah, this is sort of where, Japan really becomes totalitarian in the film.
So we get what I have interpreted as like a video, like an advertisement for the Prime Minister on how he is saving Japan and restoring Japan to its true natural beauty.
Yeah,
while everybody
restoring
else,
the Showa ambition.
I knew you were going to say that. While foreigners are following what he has to say.
Yeah,
and it's
it's a propaganda video.
Yes. And it's a stupid dance video with this music that goes on for maybe a minute too long, but like
I thought it was absolutely hilarious.
It's great. In my notes I put Nippon video is bomb with 4 exclamation points. Like I love it.
And I mean, as ridiculous as it is, it's it's a type of video that we do and will continue to see being posted. Maybe like on television, online, all that sort of thing. You have these countries that are putting up videos to sort of promote a positive image of them. Like countries like North Korea upload videos to TikTok trying to promote tourism in the country and all that sort of stuff. So I 100% believe like you would get videos like this in this sort of scenario where Japan is really just making itself, just trying to get that nationalism,
And the whole idea behind it is to boost national morale and
exactly.
really, really push the idea of Japan's the greatest. I mean, the fact that their country was the one that didn't sink alone boosted the country's morale, but from there, they constantly were building up like foreigners are trash. They are not less than human.
Yeah.
I mean, with GATS, we see them take flamethrowers to the cardboard cities, I'm going to call them. Burning down the houses, dragging people away, getting on top of people, restraining them with their legs, and arresting them, which oddly, like around 2020, kinda what was going on in America. Kinda, that that's a very picky subject.
But not just America.
This is true. But from my perspective, like that was happening a lot in America.
Yeah.
I'm not going to dive into it because it's a
beyond the scope of our little podcast.
It's a very heavy subject, but again, World Sinks Except Japan is touching on these things that would occur and these things that would happen and have happened. And from here, then they open up the idea of, if you report your illegal immigrants, we'll give you
rewarded.
Food, which reminded me immediately of Devilman, where you would get rewarded for reporting people who are actually demons.
Oh yeah, this whole GAT section really reminded me a lot of Devilman. I mean, just having, this sort of this totalitarian police squad hunting down and not murdering, but deporting people, and especially when they brought in the flamethrowers, I'm like, Devilman?
Yeah. It was really scary because it felt a lot like Devilman. It didn't remind me of Devilman because it was a better movie. But again, Kawasaki here is touching on and exploring very heavy topics.
And I hope someday you watch or read a different version of Devilman. Devilman. Devilman has just been tainted for you, and it's genuinely sad.
Yeah, maybe one day. One day.
Yes, one day you do need to.
So from here, the movie starts kind of wrapping up. They have spent most of the movie now exploring what is happening with the world at this point, and essentially the crumbling of civilization as we know it, which is oddly humoristic, I think, because it is mirroring what is occurring to Japan as well. One thing we haven't talked about is the subplot of the scientist saying that everything's going to be fine. He's just kind of living life, but he's not telling people what's going to happen. He's like, just live life. And from here, we start to conclude. Our foreigner who is married to our main character, she finds the movie star actor, falls in love with him, leaves her husband for him. They get deported. The movie star actor was married. She turns to selling herself to get money. And I'm trying to remember what happened to her. Did they leave her story?
I don't remember. There were a couple characters who I felt kind of just disappeared. Like the movie producer who was with that actress woman. His wife just disappears.
Yeah. He's one of our three main characters, correct?
Yeah.
And he finds out that he's going to be a father, but towards, I would say, it's a 90-minute movie to about at the 60-minute mark, or 70. Towards the 70-minute mark, everything that's kind of established is dropped to wrap things up. Our subplot with the movie stars is kind of dropped. GAT is... I feel like Kawasaki's thought process was focus on... So the first 20 or so minutes is focusing on the events occurring. The next 30 to 40 minutes is just following what would occur while this all happens with our main characters. And the last 30 to 40 minutes is what happens when time has run out for everybody.
Yeah.
And so this is where we enter our final act of the film.
Yes.
So we return to the bar where our three main characters that we've been following, they're all reporters, they're all in the entertainment industry, they've been trying to get this news. They basically wallow in their sorrows. One of them, their wife left them. One of them slept with the movie actress who worked for the other guy, or was going to work for the other guy who's a big fan. So they're all kind of like in this awkward situation.
Mm-hmm.
This whole time, by the way, China and South Korea have been lapdogs for Japan. They've been like the yes sir, yes ma'ams of for Japan.
Yeah.
And in the bar, there's these waiters that are a little suspicious. And then they go and you can see there's a plot developing with them. One of them pulls out a AK-47 from a toilet. And then they are held hostage. They all come out and we find out that there's another country in Japan. Also, I should establish that Japan has basically not been cooperative with anybody, as you know, the totalitarian. I can't speak.
Totalitarian.
So everybody's kind of now just at the shoes or at the feet of Japan until the Northern Dictator, that's what he's called, the Northern Dictator, appears and says, "You are going to follow my commands or you will die." So the Northern Dictator is Kim Jong-un.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious. I love the idea. Like, he's the new Hitler. Hitler appeared so much in Showa Toku. It's like, why do we have Hitler appear? Why do we have Nazi equivalent Hitler villains? Rex picked up what I put down. And Kim Jong-un kind of replaces Hitler in that regards. And from there, we learn that they've even invaded the Diet building, and they're trying to take over GATT and the military. They're quite literally trying to take over and become the new totalitarian.
Yes, that's how you say it.
Rulership. Yep. Which is funny because that is what North Korea is, but Japan became that, and now they're trying to take that back from Japan.
Yep.
Which is where our Secretary of Defense is like, "You're not going to do that. I have bombs strapped to me, and I will die before I let anybody take over Japan." And he quite literally blows up the Diet building. We are watching.
Do you know who plays this?
I do. I was going to wait till I go on my little ramble about the cast and crew of this film.
Yeah.
Which makes it all the better to know who he is.
Mm.
Do we want to just stop and talk about him?
Yeah.
Rex, go ahead.
So the Secretary General or Defense Secretary is played by Hiroshi Fujioka. For those who don't know who Hiroshi Fujioka is, he is Takeshi Hongo in Kamen Rider, aka Kamen Rider Ichigo. But he also played the main character of the original 1973 Japan Sinks.
Yes. He was also in the original X from Outer Space.
Mm-hmm. And E-Spy. And Jun Fukuda's E-Spy.
This is true. I also saw that he was in Goalkeeper Crab, another Kawasaki film, 10 Nights of Dreams, and Orochi the Eight-Headed Dragon.
He's in Orochi?
Mm-hmm. And he was in Ultraman Towards the Future.
Was he?
Yes, he was the narrator.
Huh. Must have been the Japanese dub.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, and he appears in Kamen Rider quite frequently. Whether he's playing his character. Yeah. So it was really cool to see him in this film and be the dude to be like, "You're not going to take over and just destroy the Japanese government." Like, at that moment, basically what happens is the Japanese government is falling.
Yeah.
Which is kind of nice that spoiler alert, Japan sinks.
Whoa. It's like the title of the original.
Yeah. Because had it not, I'm pretty sure the entire like country would have just collapsed because your government is falling. Like
100%.
North Korea does cripple Japan at the end of this movie to basically everybody's going to, it'll become pandemonium.
I mean, even if it doesn't, like, the country was on the path to destroy itself, essentially.
Right. And the ending here, and this is my last note on the film, is the end is pandemonium. It is absolute crazy. It is like everything. This final, even though it's taking place all in this bar, it feels like so much is happening. There are so many people, so many moving parts. It's crazy. Mm-hmm. And like, this is the state of the world. It is absolutely crazy. So following the destruction of the Diet building and the Japanese government, essentially, an earthquake occurs, and people take that as a moment to stop Kim Jong-un, take back control, knock out the Japanese prime minister. Like I said, pandemonium. Like, this is where the free-for-all happens. This is where, like, the beginning of anarchy is happening. And then the earthquakes freaks everybody out, and the lights go out, and they're like, wait, we still have a candle. So they light this candle, and they are like, oh, I should also establish that the professor, before all of this happens, rolls in on a bike and is like, we're all going to die. Japan will be sinking. So have fun. And that's where they're all like, this is going to be the last light we see. And it goes back to that theme of finding the good and the bad. And while, yes, we just had a ton of anarchy and pandemonium, everybody stops for the common goal of like, this is our last bit of light before we die.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see that even through all of this, at the very end, humans come together, which, I mean, it's nice. It goes kind of against everything else, but it's trying to find the good in humanity. And I'd like to think at the end of the day, when the world comes crumbling down, humanity would at least come together in the final hours to just acknowledge it's the final hours of humanity.
We can hope.
We can hope. And our professor makes the statement of, even with endings, there is new beginnings, insinuating even after humanity's gone, something will take its place. You know, what's to say that continents will not come back in thousands of years and new life will grow? And the movie ends with all of our characters, everybody from all walks of life, standing in this circle as water comes flooding and Japan finally sinks to its watery grave.
Yep.
And that's the plot of this movie. They filmed it in 10 days.
10 days?
10 days.
Wow. Oh.
There's a lot here.
I did not hear that it was 10 days. Oh, wow.
In my research, that's what I found, is it was 10 days.
My God. Wow.
It was also a huge hit at the box office. People actually thought that this was really good. I've read, though, since then, its standings have not been to par, and people have not liked it as much. My best friend, at the end of it, was like, I don't think they should be allowed to make low-budget movies because this looked low-budget. He doesn't appreciate independent cinema like I do. But for me, like, it's not about the presentation as much as it is the what is in it, what is in this movie. And this movie has a lot. And Kawasaki specifically said he wants this to resonate with the Japanese to kind of reassess their outlook on things and to take a step back and just think about everything.
Yeah.
Because this isn't entirely fiction. We see the problems of society in this movie happen, not to this level.
The fact that you and I can even talk about, even consider that any of this could happen, I think says a good amount.
Yes, wholeheartedly agree. And because of this, I feel like this is one of Kawasaki's most detailed movies he's done. Something that I didn't realize until rewatching it. Because I've watched most of his work. I haven't seen all of his work, as I've established, I think, last time. I haven't seen Earth Defense Widow, Goalkeeper Crab, Kabuto Beetle, Pussy Soup, President Tanuki, or Planet Prince 2021.
Yeah.
But I don't think any of those can hit the sheer commentary and discussion that this film has. And unlike Kaiju Mono, where they quite literally said in interviews, this movie is about nothing, you take it as a joke, this one felt like they were trying to say, yes, there's stuff in this movie. It's not meant to be entirely serious, but it's not meant to be a joke either. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. I mean, a lot of those things that maybe consider maybe there's some sort of theme in Kaiju Mono, like one scene gags. Like, I still don't think there wasn't at least some commentary, even if it was still meant to be entirely played off comedically. But here, the film, a whole xenophobia is probably one of the biggest issues within the film, and it's a consistent one from beginning to end. So to say this film is utter nonsense would be dismissive,
right? And it's kind of disappointing that not many people know about this film.
I mean, a lot of these disaster films kind of get overlooked.
Especially in the world of tokusatsu.
Yes. Disaster, war, and even to an extent horror films get overlooked a fair bit.
I would agree. I feel like it's your science fiction that is the most...
Yeah.
Science fiction and action get the most...
science fiction and superheroes, I'd say.
Yes. Get the most limelight in the genre of tokusatsu, followed by horror, then your disaster, ending with war films.
Yeah.
Which it's disappointing because films like The World Sinks Except Japan, while yes, it's a low-budget comedy that's the parody of another film, it doesn't shy away from so much. This film... It's really surprising to think this is a Minoru Kawasaki film because it's not stupid. It is quite the opposite. It is a very intelligent movie for what it is.
Oh, compared to what I was expecting out of it, 100%.
And
especially
it may
compared
not...
to our last film.
It may not look like Kaiju Mono. Kaiju Mono, I will say, I think is his most professional-looking movie. But it, like I said, it's not about how it looks. It's about what it does.
I don't know. I didn't think this movie necessarily looked bad, honestly.
It doesn't look bad, but it definitely rings of... It looks like mid-2000s independent Japanese movie.
I mean, I'm not going to say it's like a high-budget Japanese film. It definitely doesn't have that look, but I wouldn't even call it terribly low-budget looking. Personally.
Right, It's not terrible.
There's clearly some budget backing it.
Right.
It's not no budget. It's very clearly got something. There's very clearly actual lighting.
Right. Actual lighting and some sets. Yes.
Yeah. Even if it does reuse some sets, like that bar set is reused for a fair bit. It's a pretty good looking set.
Mm-hmm. And wherever they got the miniature explosion stuff, it looks decent. Like I like that. I like how it looks.
Yeah, that stuff looks good.
So overall, I think World Sync Except Japan is probably one of my favorite Kawasaki films. It's definitely
a pleasant surprise.
It's definitely better than Kaiju Mono.
No doubt. No doubt.
And I'm curious to see where this goes. This is your second Kawasaki film, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm curious to see by the end of this month, in case you didn't hear me before, this whole month we are covering Minoru Kawasaki films. I'm curious to see if this one stays on top.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to do what we did in October and have another ranking.
I feel like every time we do like
these month-long things,
yeah, we should at the end have like a ranking of like best to worst.
I agree.
But no, this movie is quite the surprise.
It is surprisingly profound.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what I thought.
Especially so. I mean, the movie it's a Kawasaki film, and with that you get Kawasaki producing, co-writing, and directing. His screenplay, his co-writer was Masaken Mikita, who also did Monster Seafood Wars, Outer Man, Death Kappa, Pussy Soup, Monster X Strikes Back, Goalkeeper Crab, Executive Koala, Calamari Wrestler. He also wrote episodes of Tiga Dyna Gaia and was an actor in Gaia and an actor in Time Ranger. Which I noticed something is for most of these, like a lot of these personally, I think are Kawasaki's better works. Again, I haven't seen Pussy Soup, so I can't comment, or Goalkeeper Crab.
Well, you may disagree with Monster X Strikes Back from
I do.
what you were saying earlier.
I do. And I guess I haven't seen Outer Man, but Executive Koala and Calamari Wrestler kind of, I think, follow suit to be more interesting Kawasaki titles. So it's nice to see him work on this. And as I was doing my research on the cast and crew, only a few actors appear in Kaiju Mono. A lot of the crew behind Kaiju Mono is not a part of this. This film was produced by Akio Jisoji, who directed segments of 10 Nights of Dreams, Ultra Q the movie, Ultra Q Dark Fantasy, Ultraman Max, Dyna, Tiga.
I mean, are we forgetting the elephant in the room of Ultraman, Ultra 7, that sort of stuff?
This is true. He also directed Tokyo the Last Megapolis, or he didn't direct it, he produced that one. He also produced another one of Kawasaki's films, The Rug Cop.
Yeah.
And was a writer on Return of Ultraman, Ultraman Tiga, and Silver Mask, the 1970s show. He also directed the 2006 remake. Which I feel like Akio Jisoji is becoming a more relevant person since people have started to acknowledge Anno's influence by him.
Yeah. I mean, it helps that Ultraman has become more available.
This is true. This is very true. So it's nice to see his name pop up.
Yeah.
We also had Masunobu Suzuki, who co-produced Monster X Strikes Back and Silver Mask as well. We actually had two Godzilla Final Wars actors in this movie. We had Cynthia.
Our main character is Kenji Kohashi, who was the cosplayer of the controller in Godzilla Final Wars, appearing in the scene that had the Ryuhei Kitamura cameo.
He was also in Azumi.
Yes.
We
Another
also
Kitamura film.
We also had Cynthia Cheston, who was in Godzilla Final War. She also appeared in Zebraman 2 Attack on Zebra City, which I just wanted to throw out there because I love Zebraman.
He's a cool guy.
Yeah. One of our other main characters, Shuji Kashiwabara. He was the movie producer. He appeared in Kamen Rider Revis, Alien vs. Ninja, and Long Dream, a J-horror movie. And our third and final entertainment, like our trio of main characters, Masatoshi Matsu was in Ultraman Cosmos, The Blue Planet, Pulse, and Tomy Replay. And then we had... actually, we have 3 Godzilla Final Wars actors. Kenji Motomura appeared in 2 Takashi Yamazaki films, Space Battleship Yamato and Returner. This is the leader for GATS, by the way. He appeared in Space Battleship Yamato and Returner. He appeared in Big Man Japan, another kaiju parody film, Gamera the Brave, and Godzilla Final Wars.
Oh. Who did he play in Final Wars?
It said he was just a military person, I believe. So he was probably just... Brave? It didn't give me a character on the Brave. It just said he was in it.
That's a shame.
Yeah. And then we had Nomaru Abe, who I was surprised by this. So when it comes to Kawasaki films, he was in Kaiju Mono. He was in Earth Defense Widow, Monster X Strikes Back, Attack the G8 Summit, and the Calamari Wrestler. Beyond that, he also appeared in some Ultraman stuff. He appeared in Ultraman Nebius, Ultraman Nexus, Ultraman Tiga, and Ultraman Dyna, and Ultraman Dyna, the TV show. He also appeared in Gamera Guardian of the Universe, and has recently been making his rounds in the 3Y stuff. He was in Nezura 1964, Ghost Cat Rhapsody, and the upcoming Hoshi 35 movie.
Which actor did you say this was again, sorry?
Nomaru Abe. And the last significant cast member that I wanted to bring up was the suit actor for Dennis. Hurricane Ryu.
Yes, the suit actor for King Ghidorah and various other Heisei Godzilla kaiju, including Godzilla himself for Adventure Godzilla.
Yeah. He was Godzilla in Final Wars?
No.
He was Kaiser Ghidorah, right?
Was he in Final Wars? I don't think Hurricane Ryu was in Final Wars.
Maybe
I know he did a lot of promotion for the Godzilla series. Like, he was in Godzilla suits a lot for, like, promotional material around, like, the Heisei era.
Gotcha.
But I don't think he ever played a kaiju in a Godzilla film, at least, after Destroyer.
Well, he was Junior. That's right, because he was just an extra in Godzilla 2000. He was in Mikadroid. He played the main robot villain. He was Ghidorah, Batra, Little Godzilla. He was in Orochi. I believe he was the hero monster character. I don't know how to pronounce its name.
It's a something. I don't quite remember either.
He was Junior, so he did play a Godzilla.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, he was in Adventure Godzilla, which was which was like a promotional show for the Heisei films, specifically Mothra and MG2.
And then he was a frequent person to appear in Kawasaki films. He played the main squid in Calamari Wrestler. He played.
Isn't he Gilala in?
He was Gilala. He was the goalkeeper crab in Goalkeeper Crab. He was the Kaiju in Earth Defense Widow. He was Mono in Kaiju Mono, which I'm surprised I missed that doing my research last week. And he played one of the...
you're a failure.
I know, right? He played one of the 4 Kaiju in Monster Seafood Wars as well.
Huh.
I'm really tempted... There's 3 plus a robot. I'm really tempted because I'm going to All Monsters Attack, and I believe he's going to be there. I'm really tempted to bring like a Kawasaki film and have him sign it.
You should.
He'd probably laugh at that. He'd probably think that was a good funny moment.
Get him to sign Monster X Strikes Back.
I feel like if I did that, I'd have him do like Executive Koala, like the weird one that like a kaiju fan would not bring. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up was the Prime Minister in World Sinks Except Japan was in the TV version of Japan Sinks. Which the reason he appeared in this movie was because of that role. That's why he got hired on, was because of his past experiences.
Yeah. I mean, we've got him and Hiroshi Fujioka, but I believe there was also a cameo from another actor in the Japan Sinks 2006 film.
Yes, there was. And that was it
was like a news reporter or something, if I remember right.
Was it, or was it the cabinet member that said he was married? Oh, it was the news reporter. It was the foreigner newscaster, the one telling the forecast. He appeared in both Japan Sinks and the World Sinks Except Japan. Yeah,
from what I read as well, there were plans to get a lot more of the actors from the '06 film, but like due to scheduling conflicts and, I probably imagine that like 10-day shooting schedule, they could only get that one actor, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But like apparently even some of the ones from that '06 movie genuinely wanted to be in this film, which I think is interesting.
Well, even the original writer, did I bring up that the original writer of Submersion of Japan really supported this movie?
Yeah. I remember reading about that, yeah.
So a lot of people were in support of this movie, which was great because it turned out to be like a really good film. So overall, like this, it's not a stacked cast like Kaiju Mono, but it definitely doesn't need to be because,
I mean, you've got Hiroshi Fujioka.
This is true.
So you got Kamen Rider himself. So pretty good cast, I'd say.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've been going for about 2 hours now.
Yeah.
I feel like we've covered pretty much everything we can about this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we've went through. I mean, there's a few like subplot stuff we haven't talked about, but at the end of the day, I feel like a lot of the subplot stuff doesn't
add much to the film
compared to the rest of this, which definitely does.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, like I said, I would put this above Kaiju Mono.
Oh, 100%.
This is actually one of my favorite comedic parody films that I've watched. This one is really, really smart with how it does its parody work and satire.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I'm kind of out of things to say about this movie. Was there anything else you really wanted to bring up?
No, not really in particular. I think we've covered most of what we can without just repeating ourselves over and over.
That's fair. Well, with that, I guess we can wrap things up here. Though I will say this, the one thing I noticed is the movie moves very quickly, despite being like 5 or 6 minutes, maybe too long. The movie moves very quickly, and wraps up rather quickly, as this podcast appears to have. We went from talking pretty in detail to being like, well, that's that. The world has sunk. We're dead.
Yeah.
There should totally be a website. You know how there's did Thanos kill .me?
Mm-hmm.
Did I sync with the world.me?
Yes, you did.
I know I definitely did. I told my best friend, I was like, yeah, I definitely died. I didn't make it to Japan.
Mm-hmm. Bro, do you know how quick you would have to be to make it to Japan in this movie?
very quick.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a jet that only could have 500 people on it, filled with 4,000, and it crashed.
That's right.
That was a really funny. There are funny lines throughout this, but like I said, it doesn't lose eye of that kind of important stuff that it doesn't shy away from discussing.
Yeah.
Speaking of important stuff of discussing, if you guys have been enjoying listening to us talk about this stuff, you can also support us. And if Rex, if you're ready, why don't you tell the people where they can support you?
Oh, well, dear listeners, if you want to support me, you can check me out on YouTube at RexXeno, on Twitter at Rex_Xenomorph, and on Instagram, Rex_Xeno. And if you want to check out some of my writings, go take a look at the Tokusatsu Network.
Definitely do that. And all of our links can be found in the description, in the show notes below. Just check out those link trees and everything will be there. If you want to support me, Elijah, hi, I'm the host, I think.
No.
Maybe not.
No.
No? Okay. I'm not the host. You can find me on YouTube at ET13 Productions, on Twitter at ET13 Productions, or on Instagram at ET13 Productions. But also, if you want to help support this podcast, as we talked about at the beginning of this, we've been gaining some speed, which I greatly appreciate. You can help us elsewhere. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes. That boosts our ratings and helps us get recommended to more people just like you. We have been review bombed, and we're still sitting at a 3.1. So if you want to help bump us up, definitely go leave us a 5-star review. If you don't have an Apple device, which I don't blame you, I don't. That's a lie. And
He still hasn't changed it.
Yeah. And full disclosure, like this coming Wednesday, I might be getting an iPhone. I might be getting a second phone. And since I'm getting an iPhone, I also need to get an Apple Watch. So I'm going to...
Why do you need an Apple Watch?
I'm going to have two phones. I'm going to have an Android. I'm going to have an Apple. I already have the Samsung Galaxy Watch. I can't do a Samsung Galaxy Watch and an Apple iPhone. I need to go get an Apple Watch. So on the days I feel like being Android, I'll wear my Samsung Watch with my Android. And on days I feel like being Apple, I'll have my Apple with my Apple Watch.
I don't even have a watch.
I have an analog watch, I have my Samsung watch, and I'm going to get an Apple Watch.
I don't understand people, man.
Look, don't ask questions.
Is that what the average Monsterverse fan said?
You know, speaking of average Monsterverse fan, I just realized we went a whole nother episode without referencing Shin Ultraman or The Ring. We couldn't bring those in.
I mentioned Sadako earlier.
That is true. You did. So I guess the Ring virus does come back, but Shin Ultraman does not.
It just loops around, you know.
It does. But if you don't have an Apple device, you can rate us on Spotify. That is now something they offer. They also ask you at the bottom of the Spotify podcast page for each episode, if you like this episode, if you want to leave us feedback there too, that would be great. If you want to stay up to date with all things Kaiju Conversation related, you can tweet us and follow us on Twitter at KAIJU_CONVERS. If you don't have Twitter, which... some people don't. You can follow us on Instagram or like us on Facebook. If you're like me before podcasting and you don't have any social media, lucky you, you can email us at kaijuconversation@gmail.com, all lowercase, all one word, you know the drill. And as always, we'll read your reviews on air for everyone to hear. We also have a Teespring store. Eventually we'll have some original artwork, but until then, you can sport an awesome logo we have. If you'd like to chat with Rex and I more, you can check out our Discord server where we're active, and others with similar interests are too. Recently, the most recent discussion in our general chat appears to have been about...
Gamera, I imagine?
It looks like it's Gamera and discussing. It looks like there was a photo of Chibi Godzilla with.
Gridman. Yeah.
Gridman from the recently released Gridman Universe movie.
Can't wait to see that. I hear it's incredible.
I have heard pretty good things as well, so I still need to watch Gridman the Hyper Agent, SSSS Gridman, and SSSS Dino Zenon before I can watch Gridman Universe, but I'll get to it. I just have to watch everything else. It's a great community full of great people. We have a lot of great conversations. And as I brought up earlier, we did just have a live stream. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you could be notified anytime we upload a video or go live. We post exclusives on the channel like bloopers or episodes, minisodes, live streams, and we also have an interview with Mechagodzilla designer Jared Kurchevsky on the channel. And a huge thanks to Rex for editing all of these episodes. Sometimes they're crazy. You know, this is almost 2.5 hours long at this current moment. He puts in a lot of effort, so definitely support him. All of his stuff can be found in the description below. He edits all of our content. Along with Rex, we'd like to give a huge thanks and shout out to Danny DeMano of the Godzilla Novelization Project for his amazing vocals on our theme song. You can support him by following him on Twitter at Danzilla93_GNP or visit his website, GodzillaNovelizationProject.com. We also would like to thank Gratton Conwell from the podcast Giant Monster BS for composing the music for our theme song. You can support him by following the podcast on Twitter at Giant Monster BS or go to any podcast platform and look up the name Giant Monster BS and check him out. And with that, I think we're going to wrap things up here. We survived the sinking of the world except Japan for now.
Wow. How did we do that?
I don't know. Maybe
in Japan.
Yeah. It's weird. So
we thank you. In the middle of the ocean with our computers?
Yep, that's what we're doing.
Oh, damn.
Titanic style on a door. It's a miracle I'm getting Wi-Fi service here this good.
Yeah, how was my computer running?
Magic. Well, thank you everybody for listening. It's much appreciated. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you haven't already, definitely check out World Sinks Except Japan. There's a lot to take from this movie, and a lot to think about and chew on.
Yeah.
So with that, we're going to wrap things up here, and as always, please remember, life's too short to not talk big. Bye, guys!
Bye.
We are set, we are in debt, there's nothing to sweat. Life's too short now, baby. Kaiju, not too big now, baby. Conversation. His name's Elijah, baby. And also Rex now, baby. We love those kaiju, baby. And you will too now.